Today we're going to start chapter 10. We're learning about solving quadratic equations by using the square root property. I know I've got this when I can use the square root properties to solve quadratic equations and to solve problems modeled by quadratic equations. The square root property, basically if x squared equals a, then you can take the square root of both sides and get x equals the square root of a or x equals the negative square root of a. So it has to be positive and negative. Use the square root property to solve x squared equals 49. So the opposite of a square is a square root, right? So if you take x squared equals 49 and you take the square root of both sides, then according to the square root property, this has to equal positive or negative 7. The reason why is because 7 squared equals 49, but also negative 7 squared equals 49. So you have to have both of those in your answer anytime you have an equation. So anytime you have an equation, it has to equal both positive and negative. One B, use the square root property to solve 2x squared minus 4 equals 0. You need to isolate the x squared. So the very first thing that we're going to do is add the 4 to both sides, and you get 2x squared equals 4. Again, continue to isolate the x squared, so divide both sides by that 2. And you get x squared equals 4 divided by 2 is 2. So you're going to take the square root of both sides. And 2 doesn't have a perfect square, so you can leave it positive or negative square root of 2. All right, you go ahead and try these. So when I did this, you can see the answers there. Now, D is no solution because remember, you can't have a negative under a square root. And then C, 8 and 25 were not perfect squares, but you simplify the radicals. So you got 2 square root of 2, and the square root of 25 is 5. Example 2 says, use the square root property to solve this. Well, it's already isolated. So the thing with the square is already isolated. So what you're going to do is take the square root of both sides. When you do, the square root and the square will cancel each other out. So you're left with y minus 3 equals positive and negative 2, because the square root of 4 is 2. So to solve this, I'm going to add 3 to the other side. So I'll get y equals 3 plus 2 and 3 minus 2. So so 3 plus 2 is 5, and 3 minus 2 is 1. To B, so use the square root property to solve. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So I've got x plus 2 equals positive and negative 5. I'm going to subtract that 2, so I get x equals negative 2 plus 5 and negative 2 minus 5. So negative 2 plus 5 is 3, and negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. Okay, you try some. And those are the answers that you should have gotten. So just let me know if you're having a hard time with that. Example 3 says use the formula. So now we're using formulas to solve problems. Use the formula h equals 16t squared to solve the following. Determine the time of a stuntman's fall if he jumped from a height of 450 feet. Okay, so the height, h, is 450 feet, and we're solving for the time. So if I'm isolating that t, I would divide by 16. I don't know what this is right now, so I'm just going to leave it. But that does equal t squared. Okay, so to find the square root, you're going to do the square root of both. So you get t equals, now on my calculator, I'm going to do that. When I do, I get 5.3, and it would be positive or negative, but it's time, right? So we can't have a negative time. So you just choose the positive answer. So you have to kind of think about that when you're answering word problems. If it could be a possible negative answer. In this case, time cannot. So 5.3 seconds is your answer. All right, 3B, it says, again, use the following formula. If the area of a square is 40 square inches, find the side length. So you just take the square root of 40. And again, do that in your calculator and you get 6.3. If this wasn't a word problem, it would be positive and negative 3, but we're looking for the length of a side. So we're just going to say 6.3 inches. Okay, here's one for you to try. Go ahead. And the answer is 46.9 feet. I know I've got this one. I can use the square root property to solve quadratic equations, solve problems modeled by quadratic equations. But do you really understand? So how would you use the square root property to solve the equation x plus 5 squared equals 81? You would take the square root of both sides and then solve the equation. So you would get x equals plus or minus 14.